Hey, welcome to the channel. My name is Jason, and here I talk about all things story. And the story I am talking about today is the film The Batman. Do we really need another Batman? How many Batmans have there been anyway? But anyway, that is the question we are trying to answer today. So let us begin. What is the hook, though? What is The Batman about? Well, crime is rampant in Gotham. Batman is one man, and he's feeling overwhelmed, at odds. He's shouldering this impossible burden, everything from organized crime to petty theft to murder. And to make matters worse, there is an even newer threat facing Gotham. There's a man known as the Riddler who is slowly picking off government officials and exposing them for their crooked deeds, leaving behind clues that lead Batman and Lieutenant Gordon into the criminal underworld, where the web that tangles Gotham is much bigger than they could imagine. So I don't talk about setting much in my reviews, but I think this one is worth talking about. This is quite possibly the most authentic Gotham I think we've ever seen. It doesn't feel like a stylized metropolis with painted grime. It feels like a real place with real people, real victims, and it's just not on the streets or the buildings. It's all the way down to Batman's costume, which is this strange cobbled together thing of hand-stitched leather mask, armor that feels like it's a mishmash of dirt bike armor, somewhat baggy pants, baggy sleeves, combat boots. I mean, the whole thing feels like it's something he's pieced together, not something that was designed as in all of the other Batman films. In Catwoman, her mask is essentially a knit beanie that's been cut in half with an eye hole cut. I mean, that's the extent of the technology you get here. There is some high-tech stuff. There's one item in particular. It's a contact lens he puts into his eye that he can record everything he sees, but that's really the extent of it. Everything else feels very handmade. It doesn't feel like he's this billionaire hiring this vast army of scientists and researchers to create these amazing tools to help him go out and fight crime. But even more than that, the fight sequences. So we see Batman get punched quite a bit, almost overwhelmed, and it always seems like in every fight he's struggling, right? We know he's always going to win. We know he's never going to get beat up completely, but it actually feels like a realistic confrontation, especially when he's with a group of people. And he has some hard hits, some hard falls, and I really appreciated that take on it. Again, it just really grounds the character. Let's talk about the Batman and Bruce Wayne. And I think the most interesting thing here you'll notice is that they're kind of the same. A lot of the Batman films really tried to have a distinct difference between the two, Bruce Wayne and the Batman, so it wouldn't be so noticeable that they're the same person. But Robert Pattinson's take here is quite different. There's very little difference between the two. They're both brooding, they're both gravelly, they're both quiet. They both feel very broken. And while at first I wasn't sure how I felt about that idea, it felt so much more realistic than past iterations of Batman. But Bruce Wayne, you could argue, is a little bit emo in this. Even has the droopy bangs across his face. He's wearing black t-shirts and baggy clothes and kind of just padding around his house, always wearing a sad face. And while this is a different take on Batman in terms of the dynamic or the differences between Bruce Wayne and Batman, the one thing that was a little disappointing to me was that as real as this setting feels, as authentic as this setting feels, there were some missed opportunities in my opinion. So we know Batman has a code. It's to never kill anyone, otherwise you become the villain yourself. It is expressed in dialogue, in fact, in this film. And you can tell they're playing with that inner turmoil that Bruce Wayne and Batman have when you see him unleash on some gang members. You've seen it in the trailers, and he seemingly can't be stopped or control himself anyway. However, at the last moment he does before killing the man. And I think that's something interesting to play with. Someone who has this fury inside them that can't be held back. And I was really hoping to see that explored a little bit more deeply here. For instance, if we're taking the idea of Batman breaking his code, maybe we should have him break his code. And if that's too far for DC, if that's too far for the character, maybe what we do is we show Batman going out of his way to protect an innocent, and that just leads to even greater consequences. You can play a lot with morality here, such as firm beliefs and what are the consequences of the actions when you adhere to those beliefs, but we just do not see that here, unfortunately. And so while I feel like this is a very authentic, it's the most realistic Batman I think we've ever seen on screen, it's not really bringing anything new to the character outside of that realism. We don't have any more depth to the character. We don't have any surprises. I think that's a good way to put it. There were no character surprises here, and I think that's really what I'm looking for in a realistic superhero film. Next, let's talk about Catwoman. She has a shitty life and she has a simple motive, and that is to find her friend. And I love this because she's not trying to unravel some vast conspiracy or anything like that. She's literally just trying to find her friend. And then we do learn that her background and all of this sort of ties into the larger plot, and it feels not like she's existing on the outside to confront something, but she's intermixed in it. There's actual stakes here outside of just her dying from trying to confront insurmountable odds. And so I really like that about the character. We see her pain. She's a very believable character. And she brings a nice counterpoint to Batman because they agree on a lot of things, but sometimes their motives drive them to actions that clash with each other, which I really liked. It's not like they're always getting along or they're always at odds, but it's a combination of the two, and they both rely on each other and sort of are each other's own antagonists. All right, Lieutenant Gordon. I loved him here because he plays a much bigger role than I've ever seen him in any of the past Batman films. He's very similar in personality to Batman. He's always backing him up despite the disapproval of the entire police force, thinking, you know, this masked vigilante is a joke and a danger to society. But there's almost kind of a, I don't want to say True Detective-esque chemistry between the two because they are quite similar, but more than anything we can see that Gordon is a very clever man, and he's really a good cop among a department where most of them are corrupt. Colin Farrell as the Penguin, who's very unrecognizable in this. I'm sure you've seen plenty of stuff in that regard, but you know, he does an amazing job. As far as a character though, he's really just a red herring. He's sort of put in the middle, in the background of things. It doesn't really culminate to much in the larger story, but it feels like something that they're trying to set up for future films. But again, he's just kind of what you'd expect from a mob boss. There's no trauma, there's no horrors that we get to witness in private to hopefully empathize with this guy yet. I mean, again, like I said, maybe down the line in future films. So Alfred, probably my favorite character in this in terms of how they brought something new to an existing franchise or character. And that is, he's very involved in this. He's not the butlery type. You find out that he had a past in the circus, and he essentially is the one who taught Bruce Wayne how to fight and be Batman. And his face is kind of scarred up. He's got a limp, so you can tell he's been through some stuff. It's very realistic in that regard of how a man like this could have taught Bruce Wayne to be such an intimidating force. And there's some great tension there because he, as I said, you know, he feels like Bruce Wayne's father, but Bruce Wayne doesn't feel that way, at least on the surface. I think deep down he does, and that tension is exhibited many times throughout the film. And so I think if you're looking for something new to an existing character, this is the character you're going to find it with. All right, finally, the villain, the Riddler, played by Paul Dano. He's very similar to the Joker, and I think that's sort of the detriment here. He's kind of crazy. He's unstable. And so you're constantly thinking about Heath Ledger's Joker. At least I was, and I think it's an unfair comparison, clearly, but Paul Dano does a great job here. He has that kind of boyish face, and it's very creepy when they reveal it in the film. But again, he has motive. Everything he's doing right now, you can kind of agree with, especially in today's political climate. All he's doing is exposing terrible, terrible people for the terrible things they've done. Sure, there's some murder in there, but you know, for the greater good, I guess. But I enjoyed his take on the character. I enjoyed the character itself, and I thought he was very interesting to watch on screen. And again, I loved that all of these characters are intertwined. They don't feel like separate forces set against each other. They all have these backstories that relate to one another somehow, and then in turn relate to the plot, which just really made it feel like a cohesive collection of character influencing plot and vice versa. So on that note, let us talk about the plot of The Batman. Well, it's kind of what you'd expect. It's kind of run of the mill. It's essentially the mafia paying off cops, paying off justices, paying off politicians, government officials, what have you. And that sort of is the connective tissue of the entire thing, including the Riddler. It all kind of works together in some regard. But when you're seeing Batman and Gordon try to do their detective work, which I might add is really cool. Like, you do see them actually doing detective work here, right? As I said, Gordon has a very active role in this along with Batman. And so it's fun watching them go along solving these crimes. It's kind of reminiscent of Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman in Seven. But on that note, Seven was a very compelling story, not because of the characters, but because of the villain, because of these various locales that you'd go to and the gruesome things you would find there. And then obviously, if you have seen Seven, you know it culminates into a great ending that ends directly on the climax. There's no hero in the new world. There is no breath of relaxation. It just punches you in the gut. And so it is modeled somewhat after that, because we have Batman and Gordon going from place to place where the Riddler is leaving victims and clues for them to hopefully lead them to the next one and closer to their goal. But I mean, while the puzzles are interesting, none of it is particularly something we haven't seen before. It's kind of like Saw light, I guess you could say. And because the culmination of this plot doesn't lead up to anything revolutionary, where we either are seeing a massive spectacle that we haven't seen before, or it's a intricately created plot that has a great revelation at the end. We don't see any of that, unfortunately, because we're never really deep in the heads of the character, understanding their trauma, really feeling with them. And the fact that the plot is, while it's tight and it's somewhat intricate, it's kind of what we've seen before, neither one standing above the rest, we're kind of left with a good but not great film. And so that is why I'm going to give The Batman a 7.5 out of 10. Decent character work, decent plot work, but it's not bringing anything new to this character or this world other than the gritty realism, which I appreciate. I think this is probably my favorite version of Batman because, again, I'm very turned off by sort of the Marvel-centric films where it's really like a live-action cartoon. I want to see something that has heart to it, it has guts, and I just want to see a Batman film that shows me something about the character, honestly, that I haven't seen before. And I felt like it was really on the edge of doing that here, but again, we never see it. We never see Batman go over the edge, or we never see any kind of consequences of the code that Batman will seemingly never break. But yeah, whatever iteration of Batman this is, I mean, if you're going to keep doing this, show me something I haven't seen before. Bring something new to the character I haven't seen before. Joaquin Phoenix's The Joker is a great example. Now, with a Batman, I'm not expecting something like that. I'm not expecting an independent film style character study, but bring something a little bit more out of it other than the visuals. Again, the visuals are awesome. The setting is awesome. The acting, the casting, all of that across the board is great. But the character work, while serviceable, while decent, is coupled with a plot that is serviceable and decent. And so you just kind of have a slightly above average movie. It's a good time. I highly suggest you check it out. But when I see a reimagining or a reboot of a character, I just need to see something different that is more than the visuals themselves. So that is it for me. I hope you liked the review. If you did, give me a like. Subscribe here for story-related content. And if you'd like to see some of my own work, check out my books in the description below, or you can check out my series Worth 1,000 Words, where I write a short story based on a piece of artwork every week without an outline, and then tear it apart, deconstruct it. Also, you can join my Discord where we talk about storytelling, films, books, everything related to story. And thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.